Hey, welcome back again. So here we are, the final episode before the big reveal. And I'll just be going over the finishing touches and final assembly of the model itself. Last episode I had made these rocks to hold speakers for sound, and I'm going to go ahead and secure the speakers in here in these little holes that I had made, essentially creating a speaker box. So I just have my little 2-watt speaker here, and I'm just going to put a couple dabs of hot glue in a few areas around the outer edge and glue it into the foam rock itself. And I have the other one secured as well, as you can see here. And then it's just a matter of hooking the wires up like so. And then just magnetizing the rock formation back down to the base with the speaker inside. And there we go. With the remaining rocks, I have gone and I've just used a hot glue gun, and I've gone around the bottom of the rocks and just glued them down into position on the base where I would like them to be. And I've gone and I've now glued down all these rocks. They're secured to the base with hot glue. So another thing I've done, here we have the ring ceiling, and I have gone and I have painted it with the Vallejo sand primer to match the wall color. And I've also painted this little light area here white, which won't be seen anyway really, since this is going to be secured to the top like so. I've also gone and finally glued the lower level area here with hot glue, as you can see. And so now the stairwell goes down into the lower level of the saucer. This is actually just a photograph of the interior with just the natural light from all the LEDs themselves. And it's not too bad, it's just not very bright when looking at it. Another item we've added is this EL panel, circular EL panel. It's an 8-inch panel, that flexible panel that I'm going to use to illuminate the interior. I also got this 9-volt power supply that the panel plugs into on the side here, but I don't want to use a battery supply obviously. So I've taken this supply apart and remove the components from the supply, and you can see this is just an empty shell at the moment. So here is the inside component which actually powers it, and I've attached some wires and I'm going to hook it up to the model and run it off of the power supply with everything else. And this will power the EL panel. And the panel will just fit right in the center of the upper saucer like so, dead center. And then this connector will plug in and power the unit, and I'll mount the power supply somewhere inside. So temporarily, just to make sure this is going to work first, I'm going to go ahead and just tape this panel in place and put the lid on and test to make sure this is going to work out okay. And here we have the model with only the internal wall LEDs and such on. We turn it off and we turn it on with the EL panel, and you can see it's nice and bright inside there, and everything is easily visible, including the LEDs of the units themselves. So I've got this power supply here, and I put some standoffs on the bottom, and I'm just going to take some hot glue here and put some hot glue on each of the 4 standoffs. And then I'm just going to hot glue it into position on the lower saucer in a place where I feel is going to be a good location. So I'm just going to glue it into position right here. And this is close enough for me to run the wires to power it over to my power PCB board. And then here we have the EL panel itself, and we have the cable that plugs into the power supply. I'm just going to snip that like so. And then I've run the power from the power supply over to my boards over here for positive and ground. And then I've also got the plug here that I cut off from the EL panel, which goes to this touchpad, and then I will just plug the plug into the power supply to get it some power. And then I'll just conceal the cables. I've taken the EL panel itself and soldered a little 2-pin JST plug onto it. And then I'm going to take the panel and put it in the center of the upper saucer. And then I'm going to go around and I'm going to hot glue it in some areas to secure it. And then this JST plug will just plug in here like so and go to this touchpad over on the side to power it. And I've gone and I've put some hot glue in 3 areas and secured the EL panel down to the upper saucer, and it's totally secure. It's not going to be falling off. And now it's time to just turn it on and make sure it's still working okay. And as you can see, it lights up and is working just fine. Because of the nature of EL panel, it does make quite a high-pitched screeching buzzing noise. So a little update here. Because of the nature of the EL panel and the power it's drawing, it's causing problems with the other electronics in the system. So what I've done is I've put a new power plug in and a switch, and this controls only the EL panel light to light up the interior of the Jupiter 2. So my plan here with these contacts touching to supply power for the upper half of the saucer is just not working. They're just not connecting well enough to make good contact. So I got this 6-pin cable. I'm going to take these copper pins and I'm just going to wire them back up to this cable here, and it's just going to have a cable that's going to have to be plugged and unplugged to remove and put the saucer top on and off. And it's pretty snug, secure cable that should be able to be done with one hand. So I've mounted the lower cable, hot glued it to the bottom of the saucer. It's wired up for the EL circular panel light and the top saucer lights, and I also have the cable hot glued to the top saucer as well. And then they will just plug together easily like so, and then turn the power on, and you can see the EL panel glowing inside the top saucer. And if you turn on the fusion core, the lights begin to flash on the top of the saucer. Turning it off turns them off, and power off turns off the EL panel light. So while the TV series Lost in Space, Jupiter 2 was very clean and always looked really nice, and this certainly is not a grungy Star Wars film, but we did feel it needed to have some weathering done. After all, it is a ship lost in space, traveling through space, landing on different planets, experiencing different types of climates. So we decided to go ahead, and I'm going to weather this just a tad to give it a little bit of life to it. I'm just going to start out here doing some dark gray wash over recessed areas of the upper and lower saucer, primarily lower saucer actually. And I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm using a mix of Vallejo German Gray and water. I make my own wash mix, and I'm just going to go around, put this in the recesses, around in some of the areas just to give it a little bit of a weathered look and to bring out the details in the saucer. I'm going to do a little bit more washing on the underside of the landing gear. Look like they've been worn. There's some gunk in there, possibly from oil and grease. And you can see here the lines are more predominant with the wash. It stands out more, it pops a little bit more. Especially in here, you can see it just pops. And I did these little divots around the bottom of the saucer as well. And you can see how everything just kind of pops a little bit on the landing gear. I also did a little bit here on the bottom of the fusion core. Especially with the landing gear, I wanted to give it a weathered, used look. So I'm going through again with a dark gray wash just to highlight a bunch of the recesses and all of the landing gear. Then I'm going to go over it with a wash of rust from Vallejo just to give it a little bit of color and rust look from the gear being used and being weathered from different planets. And then I'm going to use some Tamiya pastels and just do a little bit of streaking down, like the ship had been on a planet where maybe it rained and water had run and just left some streaks behind. And did some little streaks on those little divots on the underside as well. Just areas where sediment could collect and then run down the underside of the ship, because you know we are looking at the bottom side, so it'll be running towards the center. And I've done it throughout all these different areas on the underside. And then I've also done a little bit in these recessed areas on the top side of the saucer as well. I'm going to go through and do a gray wash around areas of the door to the interior of the ship. And then I'm also going to use the Tamiya pastels again and do a little bit of streaking, like water or something has run down. I'm also adding a little bit of streaking to the front windows, like sediment had collected there, and also a little bit at the top of the saucer going outwards towards the outer edge of the saucer. Again, not wanting to go heavy like some type of Star Wars ship. I also used some of this pastel chalk that I found at Hobby Lobby, and I just take some of these chalks here and I take a blade with an empty container and just shave the pastel chalk into the container and get a powder. Then with the brush I just smash it into the powder, it collects on the brush tip, and then just dab it around on the landing gear, give it a little bit of a dirty, dusty, sandy look to it as well. A little bit on the steps here, like from footprints, people walking up and down, and did a little bit of streaking on the windowsill as well. So for mounting the interior into the saucer here in the center, what I've done is I've put some magnets on each of these legs, and then I'll take another magnet and I'll glue it to the bottom of the interior so it'll snap in place just like so, and hold the interior in position without having to permanently glue it into position. Heaven forbid it would ever have to be opened up to have repairs done. And here you can see the 3 magnets that I've hot glued to the bottom of the interior. Then it's time to just take the interior, line up this one peg hole here, and then just give it a little nudge, and it snapped right into position with the magnets. Then it's time to take my cables and hook the interior up to the lower saucer so that all the power and controls will run. And I had everything pre-labeled so I know where to plug it in. I've got the power and the wires for grounding for the buttons to control the alarms and the wall beams and such. And here I've taken 2.5 millimeter styrene and I've glued them to the top of the wall beams here, and then those will go inside these notches on this ceiling ring to hold it in position. Okay, so I've got the ceiling ring now glued down on top of all the wall beams, and it's all nice and secure. So moving on, I have a piece of styrene that I've cut out here, painted the underside black, and I'm going to go around a few sections on the outside and just cover them where there's a lot of my wires and fibers and things like that, just to kind of conceal it so it's not such a mess looking thing when you open up the model. And I've also cut out a couple of these extension pieces to put in a couple spots just to support the thinner styrene, because I'm going to do it in sections. It can't do one large piece because it just won't work. And I've gone now and I've done 4 sections to cover. These are cutouts for the posts that hold the top saucer to the lower, and then here is where some magnets are that hold the 2 saucer halves together. And I've also added some extra magnets around the saucer to just help keep it together in various areas. So there's quite a few of them now around the saucer. And I've also added a clear piece of styrene for the port window, and I've cut off this post that was a guide because that's not needed anymore with the magnets. So it's time to put the lid on. We just attach this cord here, which runs the EL panel light and the top saucer lights. And just let the magnets pull it right into position. So a quick update, the EL panel 8-inch one did not allow the lid to close properly. So I got this 5-inch EL panel as a replacement and painted around the outer edges of it white, so that when the top is on and the light is on, you just see a nice white glowing circle with a little white halo around it. And now the top closes properly. So that's it for the Jupiter 2 build. Base is finished, electronics are finished, the model has been painted, is all put together and assembled. So next time I will show the completed kit and how everything works, and until then, thanks for watching. Hey, if you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.